Debrah Miceli, Madusa, Alundra Blayze, made in the USA, living that American dream. Book. This is awesome.
You got it.
This is
oh
awesome.
my gosh. I can't believe you have it.
What a great cover. I'm going off my intro script, but who cares? This is so cool. So this is such an awesome cover for your book. It's what an amazing book. I read some of it. I'd be honest with everybody when I'm doing these interviews. I read through some of it to get ready for this. Not all of it. It was an unbelievable read so far. But I want to get back to my intro. The woman who would be king. And she has been a revolutionist, just someone inspiring in two male-dominated professions. She has been able to achieve and conquer and succeed from a tough upbringing as a youth to being able to do all she's done. And that journey that we all go through, the ups and downs. But this is great. Amen. The Woman Who Should Be King, the Madusa Story, available March 28th, Amazon, of course, provided by ECW Press. And here she is. The key, well, one of the keys, because I know there were some before you as well and during your time, to the evolution of the revolution of women's pro wrestling, and actually the key to the women's evolution in Monster Truck.
Woo! Isn't that? Oh my gosh!
Then to do this interview, and I just right off the bat, I just have to. What made you decide story book now?
Wow. First of all, it's really awesome to meet you. When I saw your name on the list and they're like, Madusa, who would you want to do an interview with? And I went down there and I marked them with all my marks. I said, this. And I said, I definitely want to do one with him. And I was like, yeah, his energy is crazy good from what I've seen. And I definitely want to do an interview with him. So I don't even know where to start. Your intro was amazing. Thank you. And you already have a copy. That's like a pre-copy they send to people to read, to catch up before the interviews and stuff. And I just got word that the books are out already before the 28th. So they're starting to mail them out to people. So that's really cool. And how do you put 40 years of entertainment into one book? You don't, right? You don't. And so I know there's going to be another book and another book and another book. So I was talking to my co-writer, my guy that is actually my fact checker. And I definitely needed a fact checker, especially today, because whatever you say, people go back and they Google it or they look at it and they're like, she's lying, or that's full, or we're going to cancel her, or whatever the heck. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I told Greg Oliver, he is a fabulous writer. I said, Greg, if I hire you to do this, you have to really fact check everything, because I can remember things, but I can't remember things down to exact dates and whatnot. So his historian level is like, he is right on it. He's got like an elephant mind. He remembers everything. And he's very good at research, by the way, Greg Oliver is. He's won a couple historian awards. So I'm very proud to work with him on this. And ECW Press, when they reached out, and through a good friend of mine, John Arezzi, he's been in the pro wrestling business for a very long time, worked in Nashville promoting country singers. And he wrote a book, and him and I were talking, and he's like, you really need to finish your book, Deuce. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So everything just kind of took off from there. And with the good friends around, I really believe that you are a product of what you keep around you, your people, your environment, your choices in life, right? And so I just thought, God, these are really good people. This is a sign, and I guess I'll do it. So what else do you do during a pandemic? You write a book. And I did. A couple of things before we get started. So I'll leave it there. But first of all, I love your hat at XFL. Dude. Is that the old XFL?
It is. Thank you. It is the original.
Yes.
Well, hey, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, everything in him and Danny and Hiram and the team touches turns to gold. So I might as well bring the old XFL hat out.
I still have, I was a big, the Tampa team. I forgot their name.
Was it the Bandits? Was it the Bandits?
No. I don't think so. It was green, I think. But anyway, my husband and I were getting ready for the XFL. We bought everything of the XFL. We had the jersey. We had all this stuff. And all of a sudden it went, and I was like, what the hell just happened? But then Dwayne turned around and bought it. And I'm like, this will be good. Him and Danny and the whole team there, amazing people, great minds, the energy, the positivity and stuff. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. I can't wait to go to one of the games.
Well,
Absolutely.
obviously, this is all about you and in your book, but you know what? I try to sort of get some type of sports into the persona that I'll be talking to. So I just thought I'm going to bring out the XFL hat for you because you are such a pioneer, I think, and a revolutionary type person, someone that inspired so many, not just girls, obviously women, but of so many others, because you went into these avenues that were dominated by males, dominated by others at a time when it was tough to do it. So I'm thinking, well, the XFL is trying to do something different. They're trying to bring something more to the table. So that's why I wore that. But it's
I love it
because thank you for acknowledging.
And your T-shirt. Wait a minute, your T-shirt. Yes.
This is for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and yes, they have the yes as well. So I figured
I had to go all Daniel Bryan on you. So good. Yes. All right, so we got all of that. Anyway.
All right, we got that out of the way. NWA TV producer. This is something else. This is so great. You've been 4 decades plus of entertaining. Quite an accomplishment in itself. And I know others like a Mick Foley and a Chris Jericho. We mentioned Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson have parlayed their pro wrestling into other areas. John Cena now. It's just so many. Sasha Banks. We can go on and on. Just Becky Lynch. But for you doing it, the time you were doing it, I think it was so much more of a challenge. I didn't live it. You lived it. What was it like in pro wrestling? And then also Monster Truck, just trying to navigate through all this.
Okay. So great question. And that was great. The transitioning from one male dominated, entertainment sport at the time to another I'm going to get into it. So it's going to blow your mind. So getting into pro wrestling, I was actually going into nursing and I was going to be a nurse. So, and then I was introduced to a guy named Kai Michelson. He's a Hollywood stunt coordinator. He did stuff with Burt Reynolds, and Dar was his main stunt guy. So my girlfriend was dating him. She introduced me to him and he was like Googling me. And I'm like, dude, this guy ain't right. He's dating my girl and he's looking at me. What a creep. But he was staring at me and he goes, you'd be good in the entertainment business. And I'm like, oh, I'd be so good being a stunt woman. I'm a big jock. I'm a gymnast. I'm this, I'm that. And he's like, no, I was thinking pro wrestling. And I was like, ew. I was like, ew, what are you talking about? So fast forward, I got into pro wrestling. I left my nursing. He introduced me to Ed Sharkey out of Minnesota. We're all from Minnesota. Great breeds of people there, by the way, pro wrestlers. And so he introduced me to Ed Sharkey. I started working with him in the independents for about 3 to 5 years. I never got paid. And when he did, he paid me $5. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I lost my car. I was like living on my own streets, living with friends. And I finally had this come to Jesus talk with myself. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I didn't come this far to give up. So, and I said, damn it, this is what I'm going to do. So before I got into wrestling, Kai is just his mind is just amazing. He's still alive. He still works with high fuel cars, jet cars, the fastest car, and all this stuff. You'll have to look him up. Kai Michelson, amazing guy. In fact, you'd probably love to interview him. And so he said, if you're going to go into this, we really need to think of a name. And I'm like, yes, something. And so I did all my research on women's wrestling, and I saw what women's wrestling was there. It was the Moolah and the June Byers and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? I really could spruce this up with my athleticism and in my gymnastics and maybe throw a little sexism in there, just a little. And I was very competitive anyway. And so someone told me about Japanese wrestling, and I'm like, okay. So back then I looked at my VHS tapes, and then I started, people started giving me these VHS tapes about women's wrestling in Japan. And everyone said, if you wanted to be taken seriously, you have to get to Japan and wrestle these women. So I saw these women wrestle on the tapes, and they were beating the crap out of each other. And I'm like, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. But then I said, I can do that. And I'm going to do that with a twist of American, And so before I knew it, I was doing all of my independence. And then I got a call from Wahoo McDaniel. I started wrestling with the AWA, met Verne Gagne. I'm kind of going a little fast through here because it's such a long story and it's all in my book. It's so good. And so I met Verne and then I started wrestling. We were wrestling out in Vegas at the Showboat. And then I ran into Chigusa, and the Japanese brothers, as they called them, the promoters, really loved me because I remember when she was there and they said they were scouting out women to go to Japan. I'm like, oh, this is my chance. So what I remembered on one of the VHS tapes is one of the girls diving off the corner turnbuckle onto the floor. I'm like, I can do that. Well, back then they didn't have pads on the concrete floor. And so I dove off the corner turnbuckle onto the floor, onto Chigusa, and that won me a ticket to Japan for 3 years. I am not kidding. I was the first American to do a handshake and do a 3-year contract with them. And it absolutely changed my life. It helped hone my craft. It helped, become the woman who I am and was in back then, and changed the trajectory of women's wrestling. And that was my whole thing that I wanted to do. Fast forward, I knew I needed to get back to the States, and I did. I went to WCW, and then I went to WWE, and then went back to WCW. When I did the infamous title in the trash can thing, and that's all in my book. The real stuff is in my book. I'm not kidding. It's some good stuff. Now, remember, guys, this is a biography. You can't just squish everything in there, all the stories. So there's some stories about wrestling, there's stories about monster trucks, and there's story about my personal life. That's why on each chapter, I probably could write another book, but there are going to be other books. So just sit tight. Everyone's going, oh my gosh, the ones that have read it already, like, oh my gosh, you didn't hear, where's this story? Where's this story? And, and I'm like, they're coming in another book. I don't know. So anyway, and then fast forward through those incidents, about 1999, I just didn't like the way the women, the direction when women were how they were being promoted. I mean, it was very it was changing. We had the Attitude Era, and God bless the women that, just stuck it out over there, and the way they were demoralizing the women, and just the bra and panty shows and the mud wrestling and and I was like, oh my gosh, this ain't me. I didn't get into it for this. Wrestling. I loved wrestling. There's more to it than just being, that. So I said in 1999, my contract's up in 2 years. This is it. I told WCW, I'm done. I'm not doing it. Plus, I got a little info from some friends saying, hey, I heard that Vince might be buying WCW. And I'm like, well, I didn't want him to buy my name. I didn't want him to roll over and have him take over because Madusa was trademarked over 40 years ago. And there's no way no one's going to own that, right? So I said, I'm out. So I got a call in 1999 from a very good friend of mine, Michael Weber. He is the COO of Fight TV. Dude, he's the best. Do you know him?
Michael Weber. Of course I do, Michael Weber, because that was one of my next question was going to center on Michael Weber. Mike Weber worked with WWE marketing and PR, worked with WCW marketing, PR, Impact Wrestling marketing, PR, and then now doing this Fight TV. Everything he touches is just taken off and does amazing. And I read that part in your book. That's why I was going to bring up Michael Weber. But real quick, explain it, because we don't want to go into everything, obviously. But we'll go into a couple of things, and you could just talk about them like this. So Michael Weber, please.
Michael Weber has been, he's one of the circles in my life, one of those people that have always been there since day one, so you keep those circle of people around you, and he's good people, and he'll call me up if there's something coming up. Hey, Deuce, are you available for this? And I'll say, hey, Michael, I got a gig. Can you do that? That kind of thing. But anyway, he's the one that said, hey, Deuce, I was wondering what you were doing. And I'm like, hey, I'm getting out of here. I'm retiring. I'm sick of this wrestling crap, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, got an opportunity for you. And would you like to drive a monster truck? And I'm like, what? And then the stories in my book, dude. Wait, guys, wait till you hear the stories. And so from there, it just escalated. But I will get to the very first question, how the transition was. So with women in wrestling, back when I I had to fight for, I mean, people still have to fight, men and women. But, to get to a main event right now in WrestleMania, that's awesome. And for women to finally sign, I don't know, a couple years, 2-3 years ago, a woman signed her first $1 million contract. Finally, after how many years? 60? I mean, geez, men were making millions years ago, right? So I'm glad I was a part of that to make that happen. The evolution of women's wrestling has been great, and it has brought it to where it's at today. I love the women's wrestling in WWE, and in fact, around all the other organizations, they've really stepped up a lot. I mean, the women are athletic. Of course, a lot of them come out and they have their makeup on, their hair's done, and they got the great costumes and stuff. But I'm going to say a lot of them can fulfill more than just that, and they're good on the mat. So there's that. My transition to trying to fight for my positions and make stuff happen in wrestling was excruciating painful because I had to fight to even get my name on the bottom of the marquee. Like it would be main event, semi main event, blah, blah, blah. And then on the bottom would say and more. And usually the women were and more, you know? And so to see your name even on there on the first, match or second match was like, whoa, wow, that's a big deal or something, you know? And so even to get paid halfway decent, I never made, I would say probably up until the last 5 years, 4 years maybe of my wrestling contract, I made 6 digits. That's sad. Sad. I was good to wrestling. Wrestling wasn't good to me, but I loved the business, right? So I was always there fighting for the women to be, to have better, to get better, to do better, to represent, and be that person, right? And so transitioning over to monster trucks, when I got into it, stories are in my book. It's incredible because I stepped into a world of 1980 all the way back into wrestling where there wasn't any women drivers. There wasn't any women in the seats out in the audience. There is no little girls. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. But you know what? I said, I know how to do this time. But that's why Mike called me. He goes, we need little girls. We need women out there. We want to get more women drivers. Deuce, you're the girl, And the whole stories are in the book. And I'm like, okay. So that transition there, stepping into there, I mean, I stepped way back in time. I even made less the first 5-7 years in Monster Truck. Again, stepping back in time. But again, it's like I was, again, paving the way. There should be a title, or there should be like a job title called paver. So the people that pave the way, they still get paid the amount as the superstars because they're the ones that pave the way to make it possible for people to make the stuff that they do, right, sir? So, sir, yes, sir. It's just me. That's a Midwest coming out. And so, and so I was just like, oh my gosh, I never knew where and what was going to happen in my careers because it was very unsettling. My life has always been a fight or flight. And there's a lot of them stories in my book. And how I'm not a statistic, like I should not be here. You know what I mean? Just through the things that I've been through and my choices, as I said from the beginning in the interview, is made me who I am and where I am today because of the choices.
And it's so interesting because the book, she's talking about some of it, but then you can go more in depth about all of this too as well. And there were a couple I mentioned, which Mike Weber I wrote down. I also wrote down Sherry Martel. I wrote down Luna Vachon, who you talked about some of the things that I read so far in the book and all.
Yeah.
And just amazing stories and just trying to from a childhood, overcoming some obstacles there as well and doing that. And I just wanted to segue into this part of it because I think this to me is interesting. I had this question when I first saw this, when PR reached out to me about this.
Yes.
I kind of think I know the answer, but I'm not the one. So I need to ask you. The woman who would be king.
Yes, sir.
I kind of understand why king, but I'm curious. Why not the woman who would be queen?
We have a lot of queens, and I feel that I am the king of my castle. And I control everything that I do. I am the king of my castle. And there's nothing that anybody can do or say that can change that because I'm the one that makes my choices in life. However, there's a great little story about that title. The guy that writes the foreword, Mr. Paul Heyman.
That's another one. You say it again. That's another one.
Paul Heyman is one of my best friends to this day. And I love him. I love him dearly. And I guess I'll leave it for the book. How I got the title is in the book, guys. It is amazing.
No Don Jardine alerts here. We're going to have to get the book and read the book. And then that's the way that's the way it should be. It's just incredible. And a couple other things I want to touch over here, which I think are just so amazing and all, because in all the years that you've been doing this, and you mentioned Eddie Sharkey and Brad Rheingans in Minnesota, and how many have come out of Minnesota is unbelievable.
Oh, gosh. It was in the water. It was when the water was good.
When the water was A1 Spring Plus type water.
Yes.
They didn't have water was for Whole Foods before Whole Foods.
You're so funny. Yes, it was good water.
So, and then you mentioned Greg Oliver being a part of this book, historian, and just you've had so many stories. You've already answered one question I was going to ask you. Follow up. You said there's more books in there because I know you have so many more stories. I just think part of it, when you're going into Monster Truck and all of a sudden you see that the girls, especially, they're wearing the t-shirts. And I hope I have the name right on the t-shirt because it was just so cool. Queen of Carnage.
Yes, sir. T-shirts. That was my nickname because I crashed all the time. So they called me Queen of Carnage. I was like, what? That's great. I'm getting that. I'm trademarking it. That's it. Boom. Again, another thing, a trademark, right?
That's so great.
Yeah. And so you trademark that, you get your t-shirts, you get all your stuff. And yeah, it was the best tagline ever.
And just seeing the girls and fans wearing it, what does that mean to you? And I would think at the time, it might have meant more to you a Monster Truck than pro wrestling, only because pro wrestling was every single day. And it might have been hard to sit back maybe and say like, I'm inspiring some people here. Plus you were going through all the fights. I'm thinking it was a different fight in Monster Truck per se. And when you're seeing this, you were more at a relaxed pace when you were Monster Trucks, or am I hitting that wrong?
Well, the difference between wrestling and Monster Trucks at the time when I was in Monster Jam was that Monster Jam was real. It was competitive and it was real racing and real whatever. And so in pro wrestling, it was always about entertainment. You have to be a bit narcissist to be in pro wrestling, and it's just all about theatrical, really, right? In pro wrestling. And in Monster Trucks, I mean, it is somewhat that too, but it was real racing. So as I told you before, I was very competitive. So I found my niche. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to really race. I get to really try for something. I get to really win. But there was still a little bit of politics involved. And that was the woman thing. And there's a great story in there when I won the world champion, guys, and it will blow your mind in there. When I won the championship and what was said and heard, and it just validated, what I was up against in this male dominated business and what I had to fight every day. I had to fight to get t-shirts. I had to fight to get merchandise. I had to, and it was just mind blowing because you think it's right there. Why wouldn't you want to, blow this up in a magnitude? Well, I found out why, it's in my book, but because I own my name and they didn't, they probably didn't want to push it as much. Who knows? So, I mean, I have my theory and the numbers and everything prove it. So, there's that. I think that with the little girls, I actually started something that when little girls saw me in a truck, it's not like a little girl grew up to be a monster truck driver because there wasn't anything back then. So when they first saw it, I had little girls standing in line for 2-3 hours, and they'd come up and they're just waiting and they have their little Madusa puff truck or the little Madusa Hot Wheels. And they're like, I want to be just like you. Let me tell you, my heart would just drop. Like I've actually done something, like I've created this for little girls to be inspired to want to be a monster truck driver. And that's never happened before. And to know that I was the creator of doing that, of course, the help with other people because you're only as good as your team, but I mean, that is something. That is absolutely something. Now, there were women drivers before me, but not in, like Monster Jam and having that full-fledged coverage and be having that opportunity. So, I mean, it was so fulfilling. It was so emotional at times that it was hard. It was hard sometimes. Just I was like, gosh, how do you separate yourself from this and just go on in life and you just leave all these little kids? But, life goes on.
You have just revolutionized so much. I mean this totally as a compliment. I think you are the Ronda Rousey of those revolutionary aspects of those
Oh,
sports of pro wrestling and of Monster Truck and what
can I
she was
just tell
able to
you,
do.
Paul Heyman, those words just came out of Paul Heyman's mouth too. He wrote a huge story in Wahoo sportsnews.com like 5, I don't know, 7 years ago. And he said that Medusa is the Ronda Rousey before Ronda Rousey. And exactly what you said. And I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And you just said it. You're
It's
second.
well because I do a lot of MMA as well in
Oh,
interviews.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I just talked to Jorge Masvidal a little while ago today. They have a big
Holy
fight coming up,
crap.
yeah, down here in Miami.
Wow.
Nice, but this is your time. But I just met. So when I thought about, wow, Ronda, look what she was able to do with this male-dominated sport MMA and become like the top one. It seemed like she
Exactly. She
her and
did the
Conor
same
McGregor.
thing. She did the same thing there as I did, with the monster truck. So, I mean, it was, oh, I mean, there was women before me in wrestling.
Well, there
Every
were,
era.
right. There were
Yeah.
women before him. I know that. I read the book and I also know a little bit of the history. I'm not like Greg Oliver.
Yeah.
He's amazing, but and also I knew there were others before you, but you helped bring it to mainstream and that's then I could segue into this.
Yes.
How much, if it did, exposure of being in the AWA with Sherry Martel and others on ESPN, did that help? Did that help you? Did that help women's wrestling?
I feel that anytime that you're on TV, and of course it helps and it gives you that exposure. Verne was amazing. Verne treated us well. Like Verne kept put me on TV when I had no business being on TV and I was green and I couldn't speak and do interviews. I didn't know what I was doing, but he kept putting me out there. He was amazing. My first paycheck from Verne Gagne was $800. Like what? In 1987? What?
A lot better than the $5.
Yeah. I graduated. I was so in debt after all those years. I was like, "Oh my god, this is gone before I even get it." So crazy. Oh my gosh, the years, and I just saw Ed Sharkey. He looks amazing, by the way. He hasn't really changed. And, yeah, just seeing people in this business and going back after I left wrestling in 2001, and I never looked back. I never watched wrestling. I was angry, I was jaded, I was just like, I put s and so I just let it go. It was hard to just I couldn't watch it and because I didn't wanna be angry and jaded, so I just let it go. And the business can eat you up sometimes, you know what I mean, if you let it. And so I just when I retired, I retired, that was it. And the only time I went back to wrestling was when I got that call in 2015 and went into the WWE Hall of Fame, and the story's in the book.
That part I did read too, and those stories are
Ooh.
really good because the ups and downs and
Oh,
before
let
and
me
after, which
yeah.
again, no Don Jardine alerts, but still,
Yeah.
it's all here in the book. It's amazing and all, and it's
Oh.
just, are you currently working with the NWA now?
I am. I work with NWA, which is Billy Corgan. He's the lead singer and owner of the Smashing Pumpkins. And let me tell you about Billy. Billy loves the NWA. He loves the history. He loves the platform, and he loves that old school, like that television studio feel, right? And so I love everything about what he's doing. However, we are in 2023 and going forward, we do need TV exposure, and I believe that it is coming. But I love working with Billy because Billy is so knowledgeable. He is so passionate. and he loves the business. And I will tell you, I think he knows a lot more about the business sometimes, and he blows me away, and he gets excited. He's very creative. So it's great working hands on with him. And so, yeah, when I got a call from Pat Kinney and he's like, "Hey, Deuce, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Pat, how are you?" "Oh, I'm good." He goes, "You need to be an agent." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" He goes, "You're missing your calling, girl. Come on." And I'm like, I don't know. Okay. And heck yeah, it is a lot of fun. So I work with some amazing people.
You have and you are. And by the way, Simon Diamond, shout out to Simon Diamond.
Simon Diamond. Oh my God. He's gonna love that. Simon Diamond. He's gonna, oh boy, what did I
Oh, I
tell
remember
him?
the ECW days. Those were awesome when Paul Heyman and crew would come down to South Florida and all. It was
Yes.
some really cool times.
Oh,
And
you
also,
went to those, huh?
oh yeah, yeah, there was some
You're
awesome times.
Oh my, yeah, ECW was crazy. I remember I was getting ready to go to ECW, and Sherry Martell and I were cutting the best promo whatever, and we were just going at each other. And then, well, I got a call right before that because I was really excited because I wanted to go to ECW and work with Paul. And then I got that call. The story's in my book. Oh, you're
Yes,
so good. Look at you.
yes, it's because it's
Oh.
awesome. It's awesome. And by the way, I want to make sure too, because there's some
Oh, you
more.
got pictures in there
Mostly
too.
written, yes, but there are some pictures in here as well in the book, which is really cool. I was going to
Whoa.
show that too before we ended up with the interview and all. And as my eyes are going after all these years, it looks like about 275 pages in the book. So an easy read too, which is
Yeah.
nice, and long enough, but not too long, which is also good too. And there's more
Yeah.
to come.
Let
And
me
there's
let
more to
me
come.
ask you a question. So the final book, those are like the ARC books and stuff. So the final book has over 308 pages. Like, whoa. So from what you read and the way it's written, I mean, I wanted it to write like my personality, and it goes from A to M, and then back to maybe B to Q to, it goes back and forth. Did you find that interesting? Did you like how it kept you in, it had, I mean, it's like kept you engaged because it kept talking about each thing.
It was like you were talking to me. Is how I
Really?
read this book. Yes. You were talking to me about your story, and that's how I
Whoa.
got it.
That's
And
so
then
cool. Good.
also I also noted was the fact of it always seemed like to not always, because I
Yeah.
finished reading the whole thing, but it seemed like there would be like, okay, you had come to a low. Oh, but look at this great thing that happened. And then it was like, uh-oh, but back down
Yeah.
to another low. So it was just like, gosh, if I could say a roller coaster ride for somebody, it felt like I was going through a roller coaster. But I
Yeah.
like roller coasters. So there.
I do too. I love them. I love going. Hi, man. Thank you so much. I mean, I am there's a lot of things going into this book. I told myself, when I write this book, I just don't want to write the book. I want a story that people can, even if they don't know wrestling or monster trucks, I want something I know it'll resonate with somebody out there. Maybe a woman sitting at home and she was thinking that she wanted to do something all her life and she's living through this. Maybe there was some personal things in here that it resonates with people. Maybe it was a different type of job and the things that they had to go through to fight for, like I did. And it's a, it'll make you laugh, cry, it'll make you mad, and it'll make you circle back and be happy again. And I just really want it to be inspiring and motivate people too. That hey, man, if I can get through these adversities, phew, I know a lot of people can too.
And in saying that, and also with this written book, it just lends itself because there's so many stories in here and so many different situations you've been in and so many companies you've worked for. You mentioned Japan. I mentioned AWA. You mentioned Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then obviously WCW, WWF, WWE, NWA, so many things you've done, monster trucks, all these different things. And I think it's worth noting too, that those that don't know, you were part of the Monday Night Wars. Obviously, we all have the
Wait
famous.
a minute. Well, let's back up. It's in my book. I started the Monday Night War to make all of those guys millions of dollars, WWE and WCW and all the men. But yet, you know what? I'm going to start calling for reparations. That's it.
Yes. Yes. And I'll say this, the famous belt in the trash can incident is covered fully because I learned some things when I read about it that hadn't been told before, hadn't been out there, because now it's your side and what actually occurred leading up to it and after that. And I wanted to get that in too beforehand, before we let you go. And I mean, just IWA women's title, wrestling in all Japan. We mentioned Luna Vachon, who Luna was unbelievable. She started in Florida and with her wrestling many, many years ago and all. And you
There's
talk
some
about
stories
Luna
in there too.
Yeah, there are, and some so good and some, well, you know, it's tough. So
yeah, I mean, tough. What those stories are about Luna is that they were tough stories. They're not bad. They were actually experiences and what I had to do to protect her, basically. Yeah.
So that's all. A lot of that is all covered in the book. And I also had to say, in 1988, you were PWI's Rookie of the Year, first woman to do that. So it's just, what an exceptional career that you've had. And I will have a last question, but I want you to tell anything more you want to tell about the book to anyone out there, fans, everybody. You don't have to be a wrestling fan, a monster truck fan, to appreciate the stories and what you've been through. It's just such an amazing read.
Thank you. I hope that, you know, people have their stigma about pro wrestling. Not too many people know about monster trucks. That's why I went a little longer on monster trucks, to educate people on it. And of course, and then my personal life. But overall, I'm very happy. Of course, I have goals. I would love to see it go into a series like, hey, you see the Rock series, right? The Young Rock. Hey, why not the, Little King or something, I think it could go on and on. I mean, that's my goal. And if they any information about the book and my book tour, just go to madusa.com, madusa.com, and just click through everything. There's a lot of things happening on my website. It's full of information plus merchandise, but you can just go to appearances and stuff will be on there.
The Madusa Story, the woman who would be king. She's a king in the ring, a king in monster truck, and a king in life.
Oh,
Madusa, I'll end it with this.
What?
Miceli.
Miceli.
That's right. Okay, so what's your go-to pizza? Do you have a favorite pizza place?
I know, and a lot of people are going to kill me on this. I love barbecue chicken pizza with pineapple and jalapeno. I love it, and extra cheese.
Now we don't have to get the exact place, but where can you find something like that?
My house.
Your house.
I'll tell you a little thing. So my husband and I, once a month, we have Friday night pizza nights. And so what we do is that we pick our beverage of choice, and him and I make our own pizzas. So I do like a thin crust gluten, like a cauliflower pizza crust, and he does his pizza and he puts all the meats on there. And I do my barbecue chicken. I do my barbecue chicken pizza. I do my pineapple pizza. And then I do my jalapenos on there with extra cheese, all of it on there. And then we have our once a month Friday night pizza. Amazing. No way. Get out. You're my kind of guy. Yes.
Cauliflower, baby. Cauliflower crust.
Get out. Oh my God. So hey, so my hubby and I come down to Miami a lot. We go down to like the Hard Rock. In fact, Guns N' Roses are playing down there. So we might go to that concert. I'll have to like email you and say, dude, we're in town.
Let's go get some cauliflower crust pizza. Yes.
It's so good. Oh my God, you are amazing. Your personality is just electrifying, by the way. It's incredible.
Thank you for saying so. I love doing this. I love bringing the positivity as much as I can in a crazy world. So, and I appreciate you taking the time, writing the book, and also doing this interview.
If we get together now, I'll let you know. If we do, I'll sign that, and I got to get a hardcover or something, and we'll, yeah.
Yes. Yes. All right. Listen,
yes.
Madusa.
There you go.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you so much. And we'll be talking to you soon.